The classroom filled with laughter, but it wasn't because of a joke. It was because of him. A man, sitting quietly in the back, spoke up, just a few words, and suddenly, whispers turned into snickers. His accent wasn't American enough, and that was all it took for the students to decide he didn't belong. One voice grew louder than the rest. "Hey, say that again. We can't understand you." The room erupted in cruel laughter. What they didn't know was that the man they were mocking wasn't a student at all. In just a few minutes, he would walk to the front of the class, as their new professor. The man stayed quiet after the laughter, pretending not to notice the stares. He adjusted his glasses and lowered his gaze to the notebook in front of him. But that only made the students bolder. Two students sitting near the back leaned toward each other, whispering loud enough for half the room to hear. "Bet he just came here last week. Doesn't even know how to say hello properly." Another student, a tall, confident young guy who clearly enjoyed being the center of attention, smirked and raised his voice. "Hey! Do they even teach English where you come from?" Laughter filled the air again. Some students joined in nervously, not wanting to be the next target. Others just looked away, uncomfortable but too afraid to speak up. The man simply nodded, jotting down notes as if he didn't hear the cruel remark. His calmness only fueled the ringleader. "Come on, say something else. Let's all hear that accent again." Now, almost the entire class was either laughing, or waiting to see what would happen next. The man cleared his throat softly, his eyes scanning the room for a brief second. Behind his silence, there was no anger, no embarrassment, just patience. And yet, the whispers continued to spread. If you believe in justice, hit like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a story that matters. Why is he even here? He's never going to survive this class. To them, he was just another outsider. Someone who didn't belong. What they didn't know was that every cruel word, every laugh, was only making the moment of truth even more powerful. The laughter didn't stop, it grew louder. The ringleader leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, wearing a smug grin. "You know what, guys? Maybe he's lost. This is college, not an English class for beginners." The class roared again. A few students actually clapped. Another chimed in, mimicking the man's soft accent, twisting his words into a cruel joke. For the first time, the man lifted his head. His eyes met the ringleader's for just a moment, calm, steady, unshaken. Then he closed his notebook slowly and placed his pen down on the desk. The room fell quieter, but not out of respect, out of anticipation. They thought they had finally gotten under his skin. "Oh, he's mad now," one student whispered. But instead of lashing out, the man stood up. His movements were deliberate, measured. He straightened his jacket, adjusted his glasses, and walked toward the front of the room. A wave of confusion rippled through the class. The ringleader smirked. "Where you going? Gonna complain to the teacher?" But the man didn't respond. He reached the front desk, placed his notebook neatly on top, and turned to face the students. His silence alone was enough to make the whispers fade into an uneasy hush. And then, the door opened. The dean stepped inside, carrying a stack of papers. He looked at the man at the front of the room and smiled warmly. "Ah, perfect timing. Class, allow me to introduce your new professor. Dr. Rahman." The silence was deafening. The same students who had mocked his every word now sat frozen, their faces flushed with shock. The room froze. Not a laugh. Not a whisper. Only stunned silence. The ringleader's smirk evaporated instantly. His chair creaked as he shifted uncomfortably, trying to sink lower in his seat. The very man they mocked was their professor. Dr. Rahman looked out across the room, his eyes calm but piercing. He let the silence linger, making every student squirm under the weight of it. Then, with a steady voice, the same voice they had ridiculed, he began to speak. "Good morning, everyone. As your professor, I hope to teach you many things this semester. But today, you've already taught me something important about this class. A few students lowered their heads, ashamed. He continued, his accent clear, strong, and deliberate. Knowledge does not come with an accent. Intelligence is not measured by how a person sounds, but by how they think. The words struck harder than any scolding could. He walked slowly across the front of the classroom, each step deliberate. Some of you heard my voice and decided I didn't belong. You judged me, without knowing my name, my background, or my accomplishments. He paused, then placed his hand on the stack of papers the dean had left behind. These are the research articles I've written. Many of them are studied in universities around the world. And yet, here, in this room, my voice alone was enough to make you laugh. The ringleader couldn't meet his eyes. His face burned red, and the students who once cheered him on now avoided his gaze too. Dr. Ramon's tone softened, but his words carried more weight than ever. Let this be your first lesson, never mistake an accent for a lack of intelligence. Often, it is the sign of someone who speaks more than one language, someone who has fought harder than you can imagine to be where they are. The silence in the room wasn't just shock anymore. It was respect. The air in the room felt heavier now, but in a different way. The shame had turned into reflection. Students who once laughed were staring at their desks, wishing they could take back the words they had spoken. Dr. Ramon looked at them, not with anger, but with something far stronger, conviction. When you mocked my accent, he said gently, you revealed more about yourselves than about me. You revealed impatience, arrogance, and prejudice. But I will not hold that against you. This classroom is a place to learn, and not just from books. He placed his notebook back on the desk, his voice steady and firm. Every accent carries a story. A history. A journey. The next time you hear one, instead of laughing, ask yourself what battles that person had to fight to stand where they are. The ringleader's face softened, his shoulders slumping. Even he couldn't hide the sting of truth in those words. Dr. Ramon gave a faint smile, his eyes sweeping across the room one last time. You will learn science, mathematics, and theories in this class. But let today's lesson be this: respect is the foundation of all knowledge. Without it, no degree, no job, no title will ever matter. The bell rang, but no one moved. The students sat in silence, carrying the weight of the moment. For the first time, they weren't just students, they were witnesses to a lesson that would outlive the semester. As Dr. Ramon gathered his papers, he left them with one final thought. My accent is a part of me. And one day, you may find that the very voices you once dismissed are the ones that lead the world. With that, he walked out of the room, not just as a professor, but as a man who had redefined what respect truly means.